Do you love movies? So do I. What's up, y'all? It's KB, and I love movies, inviting you to listen to The Conversation, a film podcast where passion meets perspective and opinion. From the old school to the new, I invite a guest on to discuss the movies that thrill us, challenge us, break our hearts, or even blow our minds. There's always new episodes dropping wherever you get your podcasts. So join the conversation. We don't just watch movies. We love talking about them too. The Conversation with KB Loves Movies, a part of Someone's Favorite Productions podcast network.
Hey, this is Jason Kleberg from the Force 5 podcast, a show that forces a guest to come up with a movie-themed top 5 list topic, and then we reveal our picks on air. Top 5 heist films, top 5 tearjerkers, top 5 movie dogs. Every show you'll be asking yourself, what would be on my list? Guests include directors, screenwriters, actors, podcasters, musicians, authors, and even a professional wrestler. Subscribe to the Force 5 podcast, and you won't just be a listener, you'll be a list nerd. The Force 5 podcast, available wherever you're listening now.
We're in Way Media. Welcome back, Midnight viewers, to Father Malone's weekly, is it? Roundup. I'm Father Malone, and with me, as always, following her own personal code, which in this case is to snore loudly at all times, is Miss Ripley Jean. We'll get there. First order of business. I have lost my Father Malone Instagram account. I'm trying to get it back, but I lost my phone, and then I got locked out of it. I'm still in charge of this show's account, however. That's midnight_viewing. That's our Instagram handle, and we're on Threads and Blue Sky and all the non-Reich-based platforms. But if you've been attempting to contact me on the Father Malone Instagram, I'm sorry, but I do not have access. Frustratingly, it's still linked to my Midnight Viewing account, so I can see that there are interactions occurring. I just have zero access. So if you're expecting a reply there, I apologize. Please go to midnight_viewing and follow us there. And if you need to get in touch, fathermalone71@gmail.com is the way to do that, or the patreon.com/fathermalone if you want to pay to talk to me. I am not above that. So once again, apologies for the confusion if there's been any. Here is nothing to be confused about. Paramount and CBS can go fuck themselves going forward. You can cancel a show because you don't like your host, or you can cancel a show because there's something promising in the pipeline to take its place. Anything but a politically motivated cancellation. I was very much looking forward to the Naked Gun remake with Akiva Schaffer at the helm, but now that can wait for some uncertain future. They're not getting a dime of my money, and I'm not talking about any of their new shit until some kind of regime change occurs, or Disney buys them. Whoa, that's a sneak attack from a lovely co-host. All right, baby, you get your choice.
Come and listen to a dog that's hip. Here we go, it's Rips Picks, yeah!
And thank you, HB, for that theme. I'd like to remind you and the listeners that the number 3 pet peeve of serial killers is that there's rarely a serial killer day at a ballpark. I like that it's rarely, but not unheard of. Before we get to what Rip's watching, I just want to mention what I've been watching. It ties in, trust me. That fucking Nautilus show. I love Jules Verne. I love the steampunk aesthetic. I love Shazad Latif too, man. And he deserves a great show. And he makes total sense to play Captain Nemo. But this ain't the show for that guy. This is Hallmark Entertainment circa 1997 shit. But it is not Latif's fault. Remember him as Dr. Jekyll and Penny Dreadful? Excellent. Ah, Penny Dreadful. Anyone want to come review that show with me, episode by episode? Penny Dreadful is the best. Except for that horrible City of Angels follow-up. I disavow that show completely. We need a grizzled old cop breaking in this city's token Latino detective on the streets of Los Angeles in the volatile years leading up to World War II. Get me Nathan Lane! Anyway, the show Penny Dreadful, like the book that ultimately inspired it, had the long shadow of Count Dracula cast over the entire series, and in the final season he showed up, played by an actor named Christian Camargo. He was my favorite part of that season, and as a testament to what a great thespian he is, or how completely inobservant I am, I did not recognize him from his turn on Dexter, where he played Dexter's brother Brian Mosier, the ice truck killer. Which leads us to Rip's pick. We're talking Dexter Resurrection.
Somebody once told me, you have to go through hell to achieve resurrection. Hallelujah.
Dexter, it's like seeing a ghost. Chief Bishop told me that you were alive. She said that you were the Bay Harbor butcher.
So much for the happy reunion. What better place to hide?
It's the greatest city in the world.
Where nobody knows who you really are. Tell me more about your friends.
Prater likes to own things. Time to meet the man of the manor.
Welcome. I cannot express how excited I am to meet you.
You really like serial killers.
I pride myself on finding the best of the best in every field.
Let's show and tell, baby.
So there are others.
On their way.
Only in New York.
Tonight's the night.
Invitation delivered.
This is the dark path you're going down. I heard you to be careful, son.
I'm tired of being careful. What do you think?
I'm back in New York.
We got 2 episodes out now, 3 by the time you're hearing this, and it's very promising. I hated most of the back end of the original Dexter, and I was pretty nonplussed with the sequel. I don't know what the fuck the prequel show is. It's like watching a TV version of a movie, except it's a TV version of a TV show. It reminds me of the scene in The Fly when Jeff Goldblum teleports the steak and then Gina Davis eats it. And she's like, no, this is wrong. The texture, the feeling, it's artificial. That's Dexter Original Sin. But this is Dexter: Resurrection. Side note, pardon my digression, but I learned that when studios do that, when they continue a series, but they retitle it, not by much, they don't want to alienate the original viewers, so it's Dexter New Blood or Fuller House. That way, they can void all the original contracts. Technically, it's Season 5 you're doing, and all the promised bonuses and increased pay should kick in, unless you're doing a whole new show. The almighty dollar, y'all. It's going to kill every last one of us quicker and more efficiently than Dexter. Dexter! I read his book when it came out, mainly because of its hypnotic title, Darkly Dreaming Dexter. I know unplanned alliteration is a hallmark of sloppy writing, but when it's intentional, it gets me in my out-of-step grammatical heart. Anyway, I read that book. I enjoyed the show. My late wife loved the show. Owned all the seasons on DVD. It was frequently on in my home. That first season, which is a straight adaptation of that first book, is easily the best in the series. Surprise, motherfucker. Speaking of dokes, I promise we'll stop sub-referencing and get back on target. My favorite moment in my favorite season is during that surprise motherfucker scene when they start fighting and Dokes realizes, I was right, followed immediately by the thought, oh shit, I was right. And you see him recognizing instantly what a credible and dangerous customer Dexter Morgan actually is. So I'm familiar with the program. Enough to say that had the Season 6 plot been used for Season 5, they could have ended the series very neatly. Instead, they kept limping along with lame executions of sometimes decent premises and sometimes, what if there was somebody who taught Harry the code? I don't care if it was Charlotte Rampling, that was fucking lame. I'm surprised they didn't have Deb selling hair tonic that turns your hair accidentally orange by the end. Damn it, I said I would stop sub-referencing. Okay, original series ended. Good. They had, by then, completely mishandled the golden opportunity that was Yvonne Strahovski as fellow serial murderer / love interest. But anyway, the ending. It's not quite the kick in the teeth that The Sopranos ending was. What are your thoughts on The Sopranos ending? I know this is old news, but if David Chase did one thing, I won't say right, if David Chase did one thing effectively, it was keep the show in conversation nearly 2 decades later because of that ending. It's a great show, and we'd be talking about it anyway, but it's sauce for the goose. Here's my opinion. If it's David Chase saying there is no more television after this, I'm down. My show is so good it ended the broadcast medium, just turned it off. But then I would accept that ending from any series and call it great. And while The Sopranos lived on television, it never was a meditation on the medium. So the end of TV argument, while tantalizing, that ain't it, kid. That ain't it, kid. Dance 10, looks 3. You know, that's the name of that song, not Tits and Ass. I hope somebody's getting these references. My pop culture brain is overstuffed. I need to get a chorus line out. Be gone, Marvin Hamlish. Now, if it's David Chase saying, this feeling you have, this escalation, where everyday mundane actions seem to be adding up to something horrible occurring, and you never quite get that payoff, if he's telling us that's Tony's life from now on, and his family's for that matter, not that at any moment they're in danger, but every moment, and that thirst will never be slaked, then I'm down, though I'm not sure it warranted 10 seconds of dead air. And we know David Chase did have a definitive end to that series. Tony Soprano goes into New York to meet the families, and in the tunnel on the way back to Jersey, he is murdered. That was it. That was how the series was going to end. But before they got there, he started analyzing what people were expecting from an ending, and feeling a bit queasy about letting the nation, who've been idolizing this guy for a decade, off the hook by killing him at the last second, or letting him live, thus lionizing all of his terrible behavior. What do? I know nothing. And I'll convince everyone that it's secretly genius. And it might be. Dexter should have ended many years earlier, but the ending we got, with Dexter finally realizing that he destroys everything around him, and should have zero interactions with humans, and isolating himself under an assumed name in the wilds of Oregon, I thought appropriate. It wasn't satisfying. At all. But it was appropriate. So when they decided to bring him back with a grown son, I thought, oh, this is going to be awful. And it was. Even the mighty Clancy Brown could not make that wintry nonsense interesting. Also, you bring back Harrison, and not Ivan Strahovski? Shame on you. Then there was the prequel, and now Dexter's back himself, despite dying at the end of the New Blood series. Okay, whatever. I'd like to tell you to skip the first episode of Dexter Resurrection because it's so fucking clunky and scattershot, and for some damned reason we're still including Harrison in the mix, and yet no Ivan Strahovski. Can you tell I've got a thing for Ivan Strahovski? Also, I really enjoy saying Ivan Strahovski. She's Australian and dreamy. We get Batista back, Fuibo. I need to find Fuibo. It's great to see him, honestly, and we get a ghostly fucking cavalcade of cameos from the original series. The Family Man, Senator Bail Organa, Dokes, but no Eddie James Olmos. I call him Eddie because we're pals. In my fan fiction, but is his absence because Dexter never actually met the professor, or is Olmos continuing his streak as the greatest grump of all time? Remember him in Zoot Suit? Did you even see Zoot Suit? I'm gonna need you all to get caught up with me right now. I'll wait, go watch everything I've ever seen. Pause the show, I'll be here. Okay, now that you've seen everything, we're in agreement, right? Cool. New Dexter is promising, what can I tell you? The second episode gave me early Dexter vibes, and it's got Uma Thurman, and it hints at a plot of a secret society of serial killers whose members include David Dastmalchian, and Eric Stonestreet, and Kristen Ritter, and Peter Dinklage. I am cautiously optimistic. I say give it a watch. Enjoy. And weirdly, a society of serial killers and aberrant behavior stands right next door to our main topic of the evening. I wasn't going to go too far in depth about the Sandman, but I do want to delve into a bit of its progenitors, because everything that happened before the Sandman comic and its influences and earlier creators are far more palatable than everything that happens after the Sandman comic. Not everything, fortunately. The books remain great, up until a point, and the series is fucking amazing, up until a point. Its creator, on the other hand, we'll get there. And I suppose if abuse is not your cup of tea, then skip the latter portion of this program. I'll give you a heads up. Here's how I came to Sandman. Like most things in life, they involve Swamp Thing. Maybe that's just my life. I've been a Swamp Thing fan since I could read, which is basically the beginning of Swamp Thing. You don't need to know much about Dr. Alec Holland and the creature he becomes, but I need to mention a guy in the comic named Matthew Cable. Cable was a government operative assigned to protect Alec Holland. He failed, and has been doing penance for Swamp Thing ever since. In the early 1980s, Matthew Cable crashes his car in a drunken stupor and ends up in a coma. And that's pretty much where the series left him, until about 1989, where there was this one-off, or two-off actually, where Cable wakes up, and we learn that he has spent the past 5 years in a place called the Dreaming, and then he kills himself and is resurrected in the Dreaming as a raven. Turned out that the Dreaming was from another title at DC, and now one of the main characters of Swamp Thing had just fucked off over there, and he's now a raven. I had to see this new title. And I did, and my fucking head cracked open with what I found, because in Sandman, we were given an entirely new landscape in comics. Not just the world of Dream and its exhaustive possibilities, not just a mixing and mingling of some of the darker characters of the DC universe, not only the weaving in and out of every fable and myth from every corner of the globe, but overall, a deeply felt love of storytelling itself. It's an important book, like it or not, and maybe it's not for you once we get to the end of this program. Sandman does something I love about the comic industry. It builds and reshapes the past to fit the present. In this case, a title from the literal golden age. He didn't make much of a splash, but the Sandman made his debut in Adventure Comics in 1939. He had the sickest outfit ever. Fedora, business suit, gas mask, gas gun that he would use to knock out criminals. He got resurrected in the 70s by Jack Kirby and Joe Simon, who gave him the worst outfit in comics history. Yellow tights, red boxers, red cape, this weirdo Magneto helmet, also red. It was dumb. But their Sandman became a supernatural character, guarding the sleeping from nightmares. In particular, a kid named Jed Walker. Remember that name. So even though he had had a 70s revival, and an early 80s revival, and a late 80s revival, there was a book on the shelves called Sandman when DC gave, up until then, yeoman comic writer Neil Gaiman the go-ahead to give us a brand new Sandman. He did give us something new, but deeply rooted in the old. The Sandman here is Morpheus, the Lord of Dreaming, and a member of the Endless. 7 siblings who embody all of the finest life has to offer: dream, death, delirium, destiny, despair, desire, and destruction. Morpheus, yes, this is my Morpheus, thank you very much, you human battery pill swallowers. Morpheus controls both dreams and nightmares, and as I said, he's deeply tied to not only the earlier Sandman titles, but an entire host of other titles. Take Lucian. Lucian is the librarian of the Dreaming, tending Dream's massive library inside his castle. That library contains every dream that ever was and every dream yet to be created. But I remember Lucian and his library a little differently. In the early 1980s, I had tons and tons of horror comics from the 1970s. When I say people did not value comics, here's what I mean. I could go to the Five and Dime, Jesus, I sound old, but it literally was a Woolworths, and pick up a plastic bag that was stuffed with a couple of dozen old comics for $0.25. This was not the preferred method of a collector, nor is it ideal if you appreciate continuity. But I got lucky, because whoever was filling those bags had a penchant for keeping genres together. So that's how I got 3 issues, the only 3 as it turned out, of Tales of Ghost Castle. I just thought it was called Ghost Castle. That's all the logo said. It was a horror anthology, with Lucian as the host in a World War II era castle. So Gaiman plucks my man Lucian from obscurity and plops him into the Dreaming. Not just Lucian, as it turns out, that castle in Transylvania, abandoned by both Allied and Axis forces as being too supernaturally inhospitable, it's now Dream's castle. Now that kind of retrofitting is catnip. Well, not catnip, more like a sativa. It pumps you up and keeps you creatively crackling. Retrofitting like that is a sweet sativa for comic book nerds. I don't think it detracted one iota from anyone's enjoyment of Sandman that they didn't know where Lucian first came from, but it was another piece to keep me locked into this beguiling, there's no other word for it, new title. Let me give you another example of that cross-pollination. After my flirtation with Marvel and Ghost Rider, I was pretty much all horror all the time, with no allegiance to any comic book company. But I did spend an inordinate amount of time with DC. Given DC's general dour nature, you tended to have way more horror characters, like the aforementioned Swamp Thing. In fact, in the early 80s, Alan Moore retold Swamp Thing's origin through his new elemental lens. Swamp Thing had appeared originally in House of Mystery. So Moore brought the 2 hosts of that title, Cain and Abel, yeah, those ones, and The House. The House of Mystery was founded in the 50s, and it was a straight horror anthology to start, but by the 70s was deeply entwined with darker stories of all the DC's heroes. It wasn't uncommon for Martian Manhunter to be found stalking the halls. Cain and Abel not only hosted House of Mystery, but they had a comedy comic in the 70s called Plop! Exclamation point. So it was cool to see one of those earlier stories reinterpreted with these characters, and I guess it was double cool that ultimately Dream's servants inside the castle are the very same Cain and Abel. But wait, there's more! How about the Three? Mother, Maiden, and Crone, or, as they were known as hosts of another anthology comic, The Witching Hour, Mildred, Mordred, and Cynthia. They are all over Sandman. And by the end, everybody fucking shows up. I'm talking Bruce Wayne and Clark Kent. You can't get much bigger than them in DC. The first 8 issues of Sandman are all place setting, and are all more or less horror-related, with Dream having been imprisoned for the 20th century, re-emerging and dealing with past business, a lot of the stuff we've been talking about, and finally settling back into his role as the head of the Dreaming. This collection is called Preludes and Nocturnes, naturally. But it's the Dollhouse, the next 9-issue arc, that really cemented not only who the character and the world it inhabits is, but made the title a classic. Gaiman continues drawing from the original Sandman series, pulling in 70s Sandman frequent ward Jed Walker, and making his sister Rose the center of the Dreaming and the overall arc of the story. Not only that, they make Jed the mental prisoner of Glob and Brute, the original Sandman's 2 sidekicks. But it's the original characters that made a much more indelible impression. 3 fugitives from the Dreaming in our world, one of whom, I'm not exaggerating, I've thought of at least once a week for the past 35 years. The Corinthian, a particularly virulent nightmare with snapping mouths for eyes. He's the inspiration for every serial killer who's ever lived, and is a fictional nightmare that gave me actual nightmares. The series was also wildly inclusive. Gaiman seemed way ahead of the game, with characters of every race and gender and sexuality, not to mention of every time and every place on Earth. The stories wended their way through every culture, every mythology. All were welcome and all were worthy in the Dreaming. There'd be a total of 10 collections, from 89 to 97. Don't you love when there's a definite ending in comics? It's so fucking rare. During which we'd come to know Morpheus's lost love Nada and her internment in hell. We'd follow Dream's younger, completely oblivious sister Delirium in her quest to find their lost brother Destruction, and we'd be treated to a dozen or 2 standalone tales chronicling Dream in every age and culture. It's an astounding and groundbreaking series. 10 collections. Could have been 5. I realize I say that about most things because I'm a big fan of economy in storytelling, which is something I think they figured out over at Netflix, at least in the case of showrunner Alan Heinberg. We'll get to Gaiman. I think his influence is everywhere on the show, and I think he's important, but not as important as Heinberg shepherding the show and breaking it into its appropriate components. Because this series is a fucking long time coming, considering they've been talking about it since basically day one. In 1991, 2 years after the series debut, Ted Elliott and Terry Rossio, those Pirates of the Caribbean guys, were hired to write a script. Everyone will tell you it's terrible. It's not. It's just written so early in the Sandman's gestation that it's lacking the important continuity and context that would come. My favorite story about this time period is Roger Avery, who directed Rules of Attraction and Killing Zoe. He convinced Warners to keep that script in play and let him direct it. Total insanity. And then, for his pitch, he showed them Jan Svankmeyer's film Alice and told them that's what the dream sequences will look like. And then it was put in turnaround and there was no movement for years and years. Which is for the best because John Peters, I've been in 500 fights, was attached to produce, and apparently the guy who didn't want to see Superman flying kept pushing Sandman to appear at a rave and duking it out with villains. In the early aughts, there was a pretty good script by Jack Thorne, which was going to be directed by Joseph Gordon-Levitt, and he was going to star in the film, although he was never going to play Morpheus. Although he'd be pretty good, he does have an imperious side. No, being a very smart actor, he was going to play the Corinthian, and I could see him doing very well in that role. That film fell apart because who cares? Finally, 3 years ago, 3? Oh my god, 2022. That's when we got the first season of Sandman.
I am the King of Dreams, ruler of the nightmare realm.
What are you doing here, Etty?
He's coming, isn't he?
Yeah.
Morpheus. The Aneromancer. You know, the Sandman.
He's a fairy story, Etty.
He's no fairy story. He's back.
Good to know.
What's he got in his hands? Open your hands, now!
Forgive me, sire, the palace, the realm. They are not as you left them. With you gone, the realm began to decay and crumble.
The dreams and nightmares no longer seem to recognize their monster. You will remind them. He's free. He's out of his cage.
The font is correct. Little things matter, nerds, you know it. Tom Sturridge, who made a terrific Lord Byron in a film called Mary Shelley from 2017 that only I've seen, stars as Morpheus, Lord of Dream, the Sandman. You know, in the mid-90s, I was pals with an actress who invited me to the set of The Waterboy, where I watched her get arrested on screen for a couple of days, and everyone there called Adam Sandler Sandman at some point or another, and I wonder now, as I wondered then, am I the only one who thinks about the dreaming and the Corinthian every time they hear that? Did Sandler? At the very least, did they think about Michael Myers and Halloween? These are Sandman references, y'all. Tom Sturridge is excellent. The only way to top it would be to cast Peter Murphy straight out of the opening of The Hunger. Bela Lugosi is dead, straight to camera. We've all come to that scene. You know you have. Tom Sturridge, that imperiousness that I mentioned present in Joseph Gordon-Levitt, it absolutely lives in Sturridge's angular frame. Maybe it's an English thing. It certainly comes off the page, so it's nice to have it represented here. And I think that's what's most impressive about the series as a whole. It's all the little touches getting their due. As I said, the charm of the book, at least to an astute comic fan, was the cobbling together of comic lore, just as the comic itself was cobbling worldwide myth and legend. It felt comforting that the host of the House of Mystery comic was given the same heft as Hades or Lucifer. There was a bunch of the usual bitching about gender and or race when it came to casting this series. They cast a non-binary transhuman as Desire. No! Not the most androgynous character since Ziggy Stardust. Don't give us that. It's too in line with the spirit of the original books. Even better, Kirby Howell-Baptiste was cast as the fucking pivotal role of Death. She is Dream's closest sibling, the only one who actually understands him. But that's because she understands everyone. If Gaiman did one thing right, it's give us the personification of death that we deserve. A gentle, understanding friend to greet you at the end of your life. It was a fascinating take on the character, free from all the trappings of the crypt and spared the usual cerements of the grave as clothing. Look, it didn't hurt that she's Susie Sue. I know that she's actually based on a model named Cinnamon, but come on. No matter the inspiration, you've all seen Death from the comics. She was fucking unavoidable in the 90s. With her ankh and her eyeliner, every comic book shop had the high cost of living poster up. So yeah, for me, that's visually how I want the Grim Reaper looking, but it was the character. Gentle, friendly. That's what I was really responding to. And if you don't see that in Kirby Howell-Baptiste, guess what? You're a fucking racist, because she is that character. A character that makes me weep openly, and I'm also attracted to, which is weird. Overall, the cast is superb. The ones that really grab me are Gwendolyn Christie as Lucifer Morningstar, fucking perfect. I mentioned Park as Desire, sexy scary, love it. Freddie Fox as Loki. This is actual Asgard Loki, not Marvel trickster Loki. He's excellent with Billy Idol vibes. Vivienne Achampong as Lucienne. I hope I pronounced that correct. Now, okay, there's one. Lucienne. That's a gender swap and a race swap. Let me tell you something. If you're bitching about the changes to that character and you met Lucienne in the pages of Sandman, your opinion is invalidated by mine. Because I met Lucienne when he was the host of Tales of Ghost Castle, and I'm cool with every swap and switcheroo here, because Lucienne is that fucking character. Can we just take the internet away from the fucking racist? Or is that more fascist thinking? The best casting, though, is the Corinthian, Boyd Holbrook. You know him, but you don't. You should, though. I first saw him in an independent flick from 2014 called The Skeleton Twins. That stars Bill Hader and Kristen Wiig. Oh, that must be hilarious. It's not. Do not watch it for comedy. It is not a comedy. It's a great fucking movie, and I think about it a lot, honestly. And if you haven't seen it, you really should. Anyone surprised at how thoughtful an actor Bill Hader turned out to be in Barry wouldn't have been had you seen this movie. Incidentally, they did a read-through of that Corman biopic that Joe Dante has been trying to get off the ground, and Bill Hader read for Corman, and I just really want that movie to happen with Bill Hader. And not Quentin Tarantino, who's been clamoring for that part. Do not hire that man as an actor ever again. Hire Bill Hader, star of Skeleton Twins, or Boyd Holbrook, minor co-star of Skeleton Twins, but full-on star of The Predator, a movie HP and I will be covering in our upcoming, you guessed it, Predator Fest. If you can think of a better title than that, please let me know. Hit me up, fathermalone71@gmail.com. Anyway, Boyd Holbrook was Mad Mikkelsen's right hand in the latest Indiana Jones flick. He was the villain in Logan. You nerds love that one. I've never seen Narcos, but I guess he was in that too. He's great, and he's perfect as the Corinthian. Did I mention that? He delivers such a suave and sexy, scary performance, absolutely worthy of the character from the book. And they've expanded his role, making him the overall villain of the first season, which is wise. The more Corinthian, the better. I don't think they featured his freaky mouth eyes quite enough. I was hoping to be totally weirded out. Instead, for that feeling, you're going to have to wait for season 2. Enter Azazel. He's a demon lord, the demon lord, honestly, and he can transform into what can best be described as a sometimes boiling dark cloud, sometimes fleshy, awful thing with no eyes, but floating multiple mouths, and by mouths I just mean the teeth of many mouths, that speak singly and sometimes together. It is cosmic and terrestrial simultaneously, and it is altogether horrifying. It's everything in the moving image that the Corinthian was on the page. Speaking of second and final seasons, the first half of it dropped a couple of weeks ago, and the entire series concludes this Thursday. That's July 24th, 2025, if you're listening in the future and love dates. We'll call you Julian. This review of the show in its entirety is being made without any knowledge of the 5 final episodes of the series, nor have I seen the adaptation of that side book, Death, the High Cost of Living. That'll be out the week following the finale. So you might be listening in the future and already know, but I'm assuming those final few will be satisfying. The series overall has been. Weaving in standalone episodes in organic ways, dispensing with the useless, and giving us 2 fucking full seasons of essentially the entire run of the Sandman comic. It really feels like a kill your darlings, let's boil this fucker down to its essentials and put out the best possible work situation. Which doesn't mean they couldn't revisit it. My god, it's the dreaming. And there are other stories featuring these characters that would be fun to explore cinematically, but if I'm being honest, the story is told. And other than a total ground floor page 1 reboot with entirely new players, I think this is the only version we'll be getting for some time. And I'm good with that. This fixation on IP, but what's left of the studios, has kind of convinced us all that we should prepare ourselves for multiple iterations of properties as soon as interest in the last has faded. Whereas we used to be able to marinate in a story, or a character, or whatever. Nowadays, it's so fucking relentless that I'm glad there'll be some air between this iteration and the next. It's the reason that we won't be getting one for some time that's so fucking troubling. The very same reason that's been putting my separate the art from the artist muscle into convulsions for the past year or so. You motherfucker, you were supposed to be the best of us. You were supposed to be a gentle voice of reason. I'm talking to Neil Gaiman directly. You were supposed to live on a higher plane of consciousness and inspire us up there with you. If you're triggered by abuse, this is the time to go. Enjoy the rest of your week. I'll talk to you on Friday. During the golden age of Sandman, when he was at every Comic-Con I attended and holding late-night readings for his superfans, he never mentioned he was a Scientologist. He's disavowed membership since about 2003 in a court case, but he was working with them up until 1999. On one hand, I guess it's cool to grow up in a religion based on the writings of a terrible author, and then you go on to be a pretty great author. I dig that. Who wouldn't? But Gaiman recruited people to said author's brand new, totally above-board religion. Gaiman was a high-ranking auditor for years, right after college. That's because his dad was basically Scientology royalty in the UK. His dad, who went on a bunch of public hunger strikes for Scientologist rights in the early 70s, and was then labeled a suppressive person in 1983 and sent packing. That was when Neil was auditing. They kicked out his dad, and then Neil Gaiman married a fellow Scientologist and kept affiliation with them for 2 decades, and now kind of pretends that that didn't happen. Now, the Scientology thing, I'd like to firmly state, has no bearing on his behavior moving forward. The same behavior that means we're getting no more Sandman, and probably no more Good Omens or American Gods for the foreseeable future. Those actions are Gaiman's alone, and his motivations are the same. And what sucks about the whole thing is it's too easy because of the public's inexperience with the chosen lifestyle for Gaiman to hide what a cocksucker he really is. By the way, I'm not going to go into the full details here. This is not the show for that. For more information, go listen to what I listen to, a podcast called Master: The Allegations Against Neil Gaiman. The man is awash in accusations of unwanted touching and groping and the usual dirty old man creepiness, but the bulk of the podcast deals with a very recent case with his child's nanny and their completely fucked up relationship. That one is made particularly murky by the constant exchanges by the two involved, all documented to the letter by the show. Way less murky are his dealings with a tenant on his property he straight up demanded sexual favors from for their continued tenancy. What a fucking shit show of a human. And how utterly disappointing given how fucking pedestrian it all is. Groping fans on book tours? I guess Tori Amos won't be mentioning you in liner notes anytime soon. And I say hiding behind a community because he seems fixated on one repeated act over and over. It involves punishment and it uses some dom sub language, but it seems so fucking pathological that it's really a disservice to call it part of the BDSM scene. Fuck him. I'm fully separating art from artist here. I learned from the Sandman, and I cherish those lessons. And I think those books are still valuable, and this series is too. I hope it inspires. And in time, like all those American gods, like all those fallen heroes, we'll just forget about Neil, and all that will be left is the Corinthian. Boy, that was a long one. I'm going to bed. I apologize for the infrequency of the show recently, y'all. It's a lot. I know I probably protest too much, and I should probably just go back to once a week, but I remain committed to 2 shows. I like it, but just maybe not the Roundup every week. To that end, we are currently doing Fusco Fest, and Predator Fest is on the horizon, but future fests are on the table. I think horror is the direction we should be heading in, so send me your ideas. Just don't send me an idea like, do the Friday the 13th movies. Do not condemn me that way. Think of a cool topic, and we'll fucking go with it, and we'll probably have you on to talk. Yes, I am that tired. Ripley Jean! She says goodbye. I'm saying goodbye. Check us out on Friday. We've got HP returning to talk Fantastic Four. That's Roger Corman's Fantastic Four. You think people are sending us screeners? Oh, no. But seriously, somebody should hook a fake priest up. I'll do 30 minutes on your new movie. I'll even lie and say it's good. Nah, if it sucks, I'll be fair, but I'll be honest. Okay, we gotta go. Let me leave you with something that's not from that son of a bitch. You fucking betrayer. You fucking medium human with your fucking boring sexual fixations. Lame-o. This is from Dexter.
Surprise, motherfucker.
Are you following me now?
You better have a hell of a reason for being here.
I'm looking for my sister.
In a cargo box?
Yeah, I'm kind of working on a theory.
You forget you work for the fucking cops? We love theories. Come on, spin me a story, asshole.
What I do on my time is my business, Sergeant.
Yeah, me too. And I'm on my time now. There's no lieutenant here to save your ass, so don't fuck with me, Morgan.
All right, you got me. I ordered some furniture from Thailand. I was waiting for it to be delivered.
They have kicked my ass. Hey, what the hell's going on over here? Security, I need to get somebody down here right now. Miami Metro PD. Yeah, well, is this guy under arrest?
That's a good question.
You're connected to this. I don't know how, but I'm gonna find out, and some of what I find is gonna stick to your ass.
Hello and welcome to Tumbleweeds and TV Cowboys. My name is Hunter. In this podcast, I'll be joined by a different guest each week to discuss a classic Western movie or TV show. I've been a fan of classic Westerns for as long as I can remember, and in recent years, they've become very nostalgic for me. I love the aesthetic, the tropes, and I love seeing different filmmakers' takes on them. At their best, they're incredibly entertaining, rewatchable, and some of my all-time favorite movies are westerns. We'll mostly focus on Western movies made in Hollywood, but we'll also be covering spaghetti westerns, and one thing I'm very excited to get into are Western TV shows. I've got some amazing guests coming on the show, film professors, historians, and podcasters. And Tumbleweeds and TV Cowboys is part of the Someone's Favorite Productions podcast network, and many guests on the show will be from other shows on the network. Thanks for listening.